Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Scott Stedman podcast. We're so glad to be back. It is December. It is cold outside. It's only going to get colder. Joining me today, someone who looks really snuggly in his blanket, is Micah Current. Micah, welcome to the show.
Well, you said it was cold outside, so
Yeah,
I'm kind of just adapting to that
yeah.
that narrative, I guess. Somebody made a good point the other day that you know we're having like all this winter weather is happening earlier this year, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe that means we'll have an early spring. I don't know.
Well, yeah, hopefully that's usually how it tells. I know some people are saying like, "Oh, if it's getting colder, maybe we'll have snow on Christmas or have a white Christmas." I know some people are like really into that. Um, but then I think looking at the forecast, when it gets around Christmas, it's going to be like warm and rainy. So, I'm dreaming of a wet Christmas, just like my home in Ohio.
That's pretty accurate. I
It
mean,
is.
remember a couple years ago, I was the office I worked in at the time. They wanted somebody to the cover, just a couple days before Christmas, and it wasn't like Christmas Eve. It was like December 21st and 22nd, something like that.
Hmm.
And I remember Alicia was working too on campus, and we were like, we were gonna go grab some lunch. And I remember getting out of the building I worked in, and it was legit like 70, 80 degrees. And I'm like, it's Ohio, and it's December. Why in the world is it 80 degrees right now? But like to your point, one year it can be completely cold and snowy, and the next it's going to be rainy and cold, and the temperature's kind of in the middle. And then the next year it's 80 degrees and the wind's blowing. But
Hmm.
who knows?
Yeah. Who knows? So, a couple of so our topic today is going to be kind of more technological driven, which we're going to be talking about the use of AI in churches, um, for the better, for the worst. I know recently, Christian artist Forrest Frank made a comment about how on iTunes, one of the top two songs that was posted on iTunes in the Christian CCM world were done by AI, and kind of had a big issue with that, saying like, "Hey, like, how can something that doesn't have a spirit or a soul kind of lead our spirit to worship God?" And that was kind of his point. Um, Even to the point where I've seen people put in like some keywords or some key points, or maybe even a scripture, and just like go to Chat GDP and go, okay, write me a sermon, a 3 point sermon on Matthew 5:25 through 30. And all of a sudden it's like a sermon's printed out for you. So, there's not a lot of prep. You can just kind of do a sermon based off what AI tells you to. So there's a lot of questions about the use of AI within churches, whether that's with worship, or even just with promotion and how they promote things within the church. So, Micah, just like right off the bat, like, what's kind of been your experience or your relationship, if any, with AI in general?
So yeah, as I've shared numerous times, I've worked in higher ed for the last 10 years, and that is definitely a hot topic right now in the higher ed world. That being AI, and so the biggest, I guess, in my opinion, the biggest controversy behind that is, are students using it for research? Are students using it to actually study, or are students using it to cheat?
Mm,
And it's forcing a lot of colleges' hands on how they're going to restructure the way that they do things, in respect to their, what's it called, their student manual, and how, what's going to be considered teaching, I'm sorry, cheating, and what's not, and conduct is the word I was looking for, student conduct manual. And so, like, is it cheating? Is it not? Are they using it for research? Are they not? Like, is that okay that they use it for research? Is it not? Um, I had a friend the other day who's been teaching for over 20 years, and he told me that he thinks, sorry, he was telling me that, it's just a trend right now. And so, like, everything is about that. And, you know, but I also have a friend who's also, another friend who's a teacher, and he's like, it's only going to get worse. And so, but in respect to like my experience, like I've taken a couple of courses when I was in my doing my graduate program. Um, and my teacher was the professor of instructional design, and we talked a lot about AI in those courses, and it wasn't just like, oh, this is how you use AI, but this is the different tools that are available and the ways that you can use AI to benefit yourself, the classroom, like almost like the opposite of what you're hearing as far as the narrative is concerned about how bad AI is. I think that, you know, it's both good and bad. Like it can be used for, you know, good and bad reasons. I think it's also like uh, pertinent that we wait and see what happens, like with it,
Mhm.
because we just don't know. And like you said, Scott, like so I'm doing, my doctorate program now, and it's, I had to kind of pick a topic or two to serve as my dissertation, and one of them was AI in the classroom, and what are we going to do with this new technology? And so, I just out of curiosity, I went to Chat GPT and typed in dissertation outline for AI in the classroom K through 12, and sure enough, it just populated a whole outline. As it wasn't like a dissertation itself, but it was an outline. And
Mhm.
so I could copy and paste it into a Word document and, save it for later. I just thought that was incredible. In
Yeah.
respect to the church, I've only just recently heard of things like worship artists and pastors. And when you just told me that, where a pastor was like, "Oh, Matthew 5, let's just throw a sermon out," because I didn't have time this week to write my sermon. That's kind of like I don't know how I feel about that.
Mhm.
But then, my good friend Leo, who I wanted to have on this show, and we still will at some point, but he and his wife Megan visited me in the hospital at one point, and he was able to take a song or two of his that they've wrote together and
Mhm.
their Christian songs, and he put it in AI stuff, AI software, and basically it redid the entire song, and it sounds completely different. It doesn't sound bad or anything. It actually sounds good, but it's
Mhm.
like, what? Like
Yeah.
it's bizarre. Like the whole thing is bizarre.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm with you because I know, like, with my doctorate and stuff, AI, our last class, we kind of talked about AI a little bit. And, even just within the handbook, the student handbook, like they had to have a thing about AI and kind of talk about the severity of, hey, if you use AI, you're you're automatically done. Like it's for them, it's not great. Um, because and they said, and even like it's weird because even like with professors and like especially within seminaries, I know one professor who says, "Well, here's how we know. Like you could run it through software, but one things we know is basically since we understand our students and their voice again because they have in-person classes, like they'll read and they'll go, okay, this sounds like Scott, this sounds like Scott, this sounds like Scott. this doesn't sound like Scott. This sounds a little off. Okay, this sounds, and then even sometimes like if you use AI as reference points, you could go like, okay, here's the reference. Let's go trace the reference. And if they realize that the reference doesn't exist, because sometimes AI will pull a reference that will just make something up and it doesn't even exist, then they know pretty quickly. But then there's other professors, and it might just be with age, but they say, hey, like, I can't be a professor anymore because I just can't, I can't tell, or B, I just don't want to take the time to try to navigate students' papers and to see if they're being honorable or dishonorable with the use of AI. I think for me, AI is a tool. Like even like when it comes to like me creating like a flyer or creating, or even sometimes like since I'm not a strong writer, I can write something within my social media manager software. I can write something like a post of what I want to say, and then I can click like a button for AI, and I can have it transform it to make it informal, formal, professional. Maybe I need to shorten it, to fit within like the Twitter, 280 characters or whatnot. Um, and sometimes when I do that, I can write something, and it's mostly like I'm unsure of how to write this. Like I'm really unsure. I don't really know how to say it. So I'll write kind of something, and then I'll have AI do it. And then after that, it's like, okay, I like this. I don't really like this. I'm gonna remove that. And I'll get to a point where, very rarely I'll use it as a tool to kind of help me see how it can convey what I want to say a little bit more clear, or maybe a little bit more clarity, or elegantly, like especially if it's something like, hey, we need volunteers. Here's kind of what we need. So doing AI that way has been very helpful. As far as like sermons, like I really don't use any type of AI for my messages. Um, Maybe if anything, because again, so much software now has some type of AI component in it to kind of help you find things faster, to help you navigate things a little better. So, like if I'm clicking on a word in the Bible and all of a sudden AI decides to pull up the Greek meaning and pull up all this information on that word, so I don't have to mainly go and like, okay, here's this word, let me open up this resource. It's like it'll automatically open up these resources for me. And I'm like, okay, well, that saves me time to do sermon prep, because then I don't have to worry about trying to click or hit a different button or open up a new resource and try to do copy and paste or whatnot. It's just like I can hit a button and boom, all this stuff is pulled up for me to use as far as my sermon prep. So, in some ways, I think AI can be great in that way, but I think where it gets bad is if you're using it to preach for you. Like if your sermons are all AI generated, and you're up there and you're just going through and you're just kind of reading off a script that you didn't write, I feel like even in some cases people will realize that this isn't, again, it's not your voice. It's the same thing when people plagiarize sermons, which I know that's a big thing in churches. A lot of pastors plagiarize sermons, and a lot of their congregants don't know. Um, but stuff like that where you will know, like, okay, this is Pastor Scott's voice, and this is not Pastor Scott's voice, because the way they're approaching it, the way they're speaking, they have a different style, and it's just not the same. um and I think even with worship, like you said, with like your friend Leo, he made some music, put it through an AI generator, AI, and it kind of changed the song. And even sometimes using like an AI tool maybe helps bring some more clarity or make some more equalization with your sound to make like maybe the guitars or the drums sound a little bit better, like, or even just even an AI tool of like, okay, what would be a good song to transition out of this song to this song? They, oh well, hey, here's a list of Christian songs that you can go, because it's the same key change, the same BPMs. So you could use a tool like that to really kind of help you navigate, like, okay, I want to flow from this song to a different song. this may be a good thing because it fits with pastor's sermon. Um, so yeah, I mean, I think for me, I'm kind of still on the fence with AI because in some ways I do see the benefit of it. I do see some of the tools and some of the good it can do that kind of help, especially pastors save time so that they can go and do the other important things in their tasks, like ministering to people, maybe planning a pledge drive or doing whatever the case, so they're not just stuck trying to do worship planning or sermon prep and not really engage in the people who God has called them the shepherd in that community and in that worship space.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't feel like it's an excuse because AI hasn't always been there, right? I mean,
Yeah,
you can still write your sermons before AI existed. What's changed? And I know the answer to that question is, oh, we can just get it done quicker,
yeah,
and I can go do the things like visit people and work on the food bank or the food pantry and other things that are going on in the church and student ministry and visit with the home, the homebound or whatever. But you know, I was thinking about it as you were talking, and although we're kind of talking about the bad side, I guess, of AI, like there are good things that it does, and or I would say cool things like my wife and I uh, took some family pictures this summer with her family, and she was able to take one of the pictures in that we took and throw it into an AI, and like it made it like an animated version,
yeah. Hmm.
and it was really cool. Like it was just like, oh, you can do this with AI, and you know, same thing with like if I'm doing social media for a church and I'm kind of stumped on what I should write for the social media post for the day. Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and all those social media outlets have, they're called AI smart tools or AI creative or AI writing tools or whatever it may be. And you can put your stuff in there and it can offer suggestions in respect to like what you should write. And it gives alternatives to what you're doing. And it doesn't mean you have to like take exactly what they're suggesting. And I almost am of the opinion that like, okay, I'll I'll put something in, comes back. I'm not going to use the whole thing, and if I use any of it, I'll use part of it. And man, that's just kind of where it gets sticky too. Like back to the higher ed conversation. It's like, is that plagiarism? Is it not? Is it cheating? Is it not? And in the work world, like if we're doing stuff for the church, aside from I think you talking about writing sermons and preaching them and being a script, I don't think that there's really an issue with using AI in other areas of the church. Um, One of the other things I thought about was, um, we talk a lot about curriculum, and I know
Hmm.
that you deal with that a lot with children's ministry and student ministry and things like that, and even VBS for that matter. Every year they have the big hot button. Oh, this is the VBS that everybody's using. Canned curriculum. Years ago, Alicia and I were, I guess, quote unquote, candidating in a church, and we noticed that we had went to the church to visit the week before, and then the next week was the week that I led worship and did all that stuff. But we realized that they were in a sermon series, but they also had like very similar like recaps and very similar like notes and things like that. And come to find out that they used curriculum for their sermons,
Mm,
and I didn't even know that was a thing. And so, like, if you look at
yeah.
that, how is that different from using AI and having, a 4-part sermon series on, I don't know, the Sermon on the Mount or, whatever.
Yeah, I think that to answer that question, I think it has to do with, the theology, right? One's theological view or theological. So if I'm having AI dictate my theology in
Yeah.
the that I'm proclaiming, then to me it almost answers the question, how is my theology being shaped if I'm constantly using AI to do it? Because if theology is the study of God and I'm going through and I'm studying the word and studying this, but then if I'm just saying I'm not going to read the Bible, I'm just going to say, "Hey, AI, write me a, expository sermon on the Sermon on the Mount," and I do no research, do nothing, and I'm just having something computer generated done for me. And then all I do is like read it a few times just to kind of get the gist of it and go, okay. And then I go into it. Then to me, I almost feel like I feel like it's almost cheating the congregation because again, like if I'm saving time, and let's just, go with the extreme. Let's just go with the extreme of if I'm using AI to write my sermons and then that saves me a bunch of time because I'm not doing the prep, I'm not doing anything. But then then what am I doing with that extra time? Am I actually ministering to people, or am I just, taking extra time off to do whatever I want, or to go fishing, or to take long trips to with my family, and I'm just kind of not there. And then I show up and it's like, oh hey, I'm just going to go ahead and preach this 15-minute sermon that a computer generated for me. And then I'm going to go back and do whatever I want to do. And then, of course, I'm getting paid. I'm getting paid a salary to minister to people, to write sermons, to do worship planning, do all this. And if I'm having a computer do it all for me, then what are you actually paying me for? Am I being a good steward of other people's finances that they're tithing to the church that's covering not only the ministries and the upkeep of the facilities, but even my salary? Am I being mindful and diligent with how I'm doing ministry if I'm just letting artificial intelligence do all the work for me? And, there's a lot of churches that ordain people to become ministers without any type of schooling, or it's more of like, well, if you feel called to ministry, then you can be a minister. So how many pastors are going to be like, well, I feel called to ministry, I'm going from being a used car salesman to being a pastor of a small local church, and then I'm just going to use AI to write my sermons?
Didn't
I
go to
mean,
Bible college, didn't go to seminary, didn't.
yeah, didn't go to Bible college, didn't go to seminary, just AI is going to be my, virtual secretary to write all my stuff, or my ghostwriter to write all my stuff. Hey, you know what? I might even write a book about this. I'm going to have AI do it, be my ghostwriter. Then I'm going to have a New York Times bestseller. And I didn't even write one thing except for a prompt. Write a 250-page novel on marriage that includes 7 chapters. Boom, gold.
Well, let me ask you this, Scott. Like, eh,
Yeah,
I have a friend who works in higher ed, and he was like, "There's really no stopping higher or AI. It's only going to get bigger." And
yeah.
what are churches going to do about things like this? If that's in fact what pastors are doing, writing their sermons, writing curriculum, writing whatever, what we're if I could talk, that would be amazing. But what kind of consequences are going to, come from the fact that pastors are not legitimately writing their sermons or legitimately writing their lessons for, whatever it is, Wednesday night church, Bible study, small groups for the fall season, spring season, um, XYZ. Do you think, it's part of, I guess it's a two-part question. One, what do you think the consequences are going to be? And then B, do you think that generations like ours and younger are just going to be like, oh, work smarter, not harder, and just do it?
Yeah, that's a good that's a very good question because it's a good question because it really dives into the fact that, especially when you got, I think with AI, especially unchecked AI, because again, AI is only going to get bigger and bigger. The only thing it can really do is put limitations on how it works. And sometimes those limitations are going to be based on the pastor, it's going to be based on the elder board or the leadership boards of the church. And it's also going to have to be spoken at the higher levels of your denomination on how this is going to be done. Um, in some ways, I see that AI can be used to abuse. Like the example before, if someone has no training and they're using AI to write sermons, I mean, how often are you going to write something, or maybe giving's down, so you have AI write you a sermon to really try to elicit people to give more money to the church, and you're using that to kind of help fund things, that can lead to abuse. um but then, even then, like, sometimes just the fact that there are musicians that are drawing mass following, lots of followers, lots of plays per day, and they're not even real people. And places like Apple and Amazon and Spotify are allowing AI artists to create music. And even the fact that there's even Hollywood was like tracking down a certain individual to be in their movies, and they didn't realize that it was an like it was AI. It was completely made up. We're like, oh, we want this actress to be in our movie. It's like, it's not even real. And I think what will happen is eventually their smaller churches are just going to continue to be obsolete because they can't get with technology, or they're going to have someone who uses AI in an incorrect way, and they just don't have the wisdom or the knowledge to really ask the appropriate questions to make sure that this is being done in a very tasteful manner, in a very respectful manner. But at the same time, I mean, I think as more and more people continue to, their interactions with church communities is through Reels and TikTok and these Snap things. I mean, how often can you scroll something and see like a 30-second TikTok of someone doing a message, and you kind of go, oh, this is great. I'm going to follow them. I'm going to look up their church, and you kind of, well, I'm going to watch their live stream. And it's like, well, it's all fake. Kind of like when I was sharing the stuff about, Reverend Yeti and Reverend Bigfoot when they're up there preaching and doing stuff, and it's like a Yeti. Like, that stuff's funny. I find that amusing. But then when it's a real person doing it, and then you're like, oh, okay. And even now, like, you could get fooled by AI and thinking, oh, is this really happening in the church? It's like, well, no, it's all fake. It's not even real. It just looks real because AI's gotten better, technology's gotten better, the realism has gotten better. Like, there's times with early AI, like if I was scrolling through TikTok or scrolling through Instagram, I can tell, okay, this is a real person, this is AI. And now there's times where I'll see something and I go, oh, that's interesting. And then I'll look and I go, wait a minute, no, this is AI. And even though a lot of places like YouTube and TikTok, they have checkboxes to say, is this AI generated? so that the person who's watching it can know, yes, this is AI generated. But there's sometimes where I can see like a watermark. I think Sora is like an AI generator. Like I'll see a watermark that says Sora, but then down at the bottom, I see nothing that says it was AI generated. And if you're someone who's ignorant and didn't know what that was, you probably would have thought like, oh, this is real. Or I don't remember this episode of Bob Barker opening up a fifth dimension and getting sucked in. Like, what the heck was that? Like, well, because it's AI. It's all AI generated, but it looks real. So I don't know, man. It's something that I think a lot of pastors, churches, seminaries, Bible colleges really have to learn, and just like anything now, like what's the ethical view to do these things? And I think that's going to be the most important thing to I mean, that's going to be really the most important thing to really navigate is how do you use that in an appropriate manner, not only within churches, but even within business and even your own personal life as well, because it can easily get abused. Micah, you're muted.
Wow, that hasn't happened for a while. Um, as as we, I must have bumped it with my thumb. But anyway,
Yeah.
um, is it's a continuing conversation for sure as technology grows, as this AI conversation grows, as AI itself grows. Um, I guess being careful and being cognizant of the fact that it's, you have to realize what's real and what's not. And, you know, I guess boundaries is a good word for it. What is your church going to do if, like you said, your pastor is writing AI sermons every week and not really writing them himself or herself? And are there going to be consequences for that or not? I mean, I don't know. Like, it's just, it's an interesting conversation for sure because, like, again, you have this generational gap of people that are our parents' age probably don't even know what AI is. You got our generation that's learning what it is, and you got the generation after us that it's like, oh, duh. And so, yeah, it's an interesting conversation. It's gonna continue to grow as we, I guess, evolve as humans.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, friends, that's going to do it for us. So thank you so much for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this podcast and enjoyed the topic of AI. And let us know, how are you using AI in your church? Are you someone who's like against AI in the church? We would like to hear your thoughts and your comments. So friends, thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week, and we'll be back on within our episode. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Scott Stedman Podcast. The Scott Stedman Podcast is made possible by support from our listeners. We thank listeners like Patty and Scott, whose support goes to this podcast's continual growth and maintenance. If you want to support this podcast, you can do so in a number of ways. First, feel free to give us a 5-star rating if you enjoyed this episode and share it with your friends. If you'd like to financially support the Scott Stedman Podcast, you can go to the website ko-fi.com/the Scott Stedman Podcast. That website again is ko-fi.com/the Scott Stedman Podcast. Thank you so much for listening.